This video is brought to you by Star Conflict. It's a free, fast-paced online space action game featuring large-scale battles. Play Star Conflict for free and support this channel and get a Black Hawk spaceship and a 3-day account boost as a bonus. Link below. So today we're answering a viewer question because Cassie17 asks us, why are Nintendo consoles so much more durable than any other system? God, they are. I had a Game Boy Pocket. That thing was a beast. Nintendo has a surprisingly long history that extends all the way back to the late 19th century, which we'll talk about a bit more in the bonus facts section in a bit. But for now, today the company is arguably best known for the series of gaming consoles it has produced over the years, many of which are rumored by fans to be practically indestructible. In fact, numerous videos exist online of people subjecting Nintendo devices to a host of extreme tests in an effort to test the limits of their legendary longevity. As a result, we have examples like a Gamecube surviving being hit by a sledgehammer. Shame it didn't survive, the business world. NES cartridges surviving being run over by cars or being put through a washing machine, and even a 3DS surviving being set on fire. All of this has led to a legend that speaks of a rare element known simply as Nintendium. The exact properties of this mysterious element vary from source to source, but it is generally described as being hugely durable and virtually impervious to damage. Nintendo supposedly discovered this element in the early 1980s and have since used it in every console they've ever produced, leading to them possessing similar levels of durability and also the lamest ongoing joke ever. Whilst there's no such thing as Nintendium in real life, what a shock. Or at least so Nintendo wants their competitors to believe. The fact that consumers came up with such a rich and bizarre narrative in an attempt to explain how Nintendo consoles are seemingly so much more hard-wearing than the consoles of its competitors speaks volumes about the durability of their products. While we initially figured that many of the rumors surrounding the longevity of Nintendo consoles were the product of nostalgia, weirdly, it seems that the company really does make products that are noticeably more sturdy than many of its rivals. Exhibit A. Perhaps the most famous example of Nintendo product longevity is the so-called Gulf War Game Boy, named because it reportedly survived being hit by a bomb during the Gulf War. The Game Boy itself is currently on display at the Nintendo World Store in New York, and according to a small placard placed below it, it was found amongst the rubble of a bombed-out military barracks in 1991 by a soldier who was astonished to find that it still worked. The Game Boy was subsequently gifted to Nintendo, who connected it to a charger and put it on display in the newly constructed store in 2005. According to the expose in Nintendo Power magazine on this little device, with the exception of the attached charger, which is necessary for the device to power on because its battery pack is melted shut, the device possesses 100% of its original parts. Interestingly, it can only play one game, Tetris, and to be fair, that's the only game you need, because the cartridge was fused to the console in the heat of the blast. Still, not bad for a charred hunk of technology designed and built in the 1980s. So, how did they do it? Well, when it comes to designing its products, Nintendo is known for subjecting all of their wares to extensive, occasionally extreme stress tests. While it's true that they bomb them. While it's true that all manufacturers will submit new products to routine stress tests to ensure that they comply with safety guidelines, Nintendo is known for going above and beyond what the minimum guidelines require. Due to the fact that Nintendo is notoriously secretive about how it develops and tests its products, there are a number of somewhat humorous rumors online detailing bizarre tests Nintendo supposedly subjects its new products to, including throwing them off buildings and setting them on fire. Beyond rumor, according to the book Nintendo Magic, which offers a rare look at how the company actually operates behind the scenes, Nintendo subjects many of its products to tests that are representative of potential hardships that they could run into during everyday use in war. Not really in war, just the everyday use part. For example, the Nintendo Wii underwent numerous redesigns until it could reliably support 80 kilos, slightly more than the average weight of a fully grown man, for a minute without suffering any damage. This just seems like a solid way to invite people to stand on your console. This way it wouldn't break if it was accidentally stepped on by an adult, since Nintendo were aware that younger users might keep the console on the floor, where such an eventuality was an inevitability. Similarly, when it came to the Nintendo DS, Nintendo's late CEO Satoru Iwata told the hardware design team that the device wouldn't be considered for mass production until they came up with a design for the device that could consistently survive being dropped from a height of 1.5 meters 10 times in a row without being damaged. Iwata's reasoning was as follows: if a kid puts a games console in the basket of their bicycle and then has to make a sudden stop, the console can come flying out, and it's not going to land on carpet. On top of this, the device was also subjected to routine stress tests that include having each of its buttons pressed thousands of times to simulate a lifetime of play, and being buffed for hours to test whether it could hold up to being removed from a person's pocket hundreds of times. It was also stress tested by being left in various extreme environments from cold, hot to ultra humid for lengthy periods of time to make sure that the device will retain its reliability no matter where it's played on Earth. Moving on, when the company was developing the follow-up to the Nintendo DS, the Nintendo 3DS, they were similarly adamant that the device should be able to survive a comparable amount of punishment while simultaneously being more ergonomical. This was to address a common complaint about the original DS console. To make the device more ergonomic, the design department gave the 3DS tapered edges that made it easier to hold. However, this had the inadvertent effect of making the device weaker, structurally speaking, since it was now far more likely to land on a single edge if dropped. Unperturbed, Nintendo told the design team to keep the tapered look, but figure out how to make it stronger without raising costs or making the device more difficult to produce. The design department were like, what? According to Hironori Akai, a member of Nintendo's research and engineering department, when he initially heard this brief, he believed that creating such a device on a mass scale would be impossible since it was seemingly demanding contradictory things, a device that was simultaneously of high-quality solid construction and low cost. In the end, Akai was able to develop a new type of high-rigidity nylon with glass fiber in it that was suitably strong enough to survive a drop when applied in a thick enough layer to the device's outer shell. This all segues rather nicely into today's sponsor. It doesn't really, but how quick were you jumping on that fast-forward button? This all segues rather nicely into a telling quote from Iwata about Nintendo's philosophy when it comes to design. According to Iwata, Nintendo as a company shares a common element with Apple's philosophy, in that they both try to produce simple, straightforward technology that appeals to everyone. Iwata stressed, however, that where Apple and Nintendo differ is that we won't hesitate to choose making something more durable over making it 0.5mm thinner. Burn. Finally, along with subjecting their products to more in-depth and diverse stress tests than many of its competitors, Nintendo is also known for supporting its products long after they've stopped selling them. For example, Nintendo didn't officially stop offering repairs and replacement parts for the original Japanese Famicom console, released in 1983, until 2007 because they ran out of spare parts. The same can be said for Nintendo's other legacy systems, which the company continued to support well into the 2000s until they similarly ran out of replacement parts to offer consumers. So while Nintendo products may not be truly indestructible, that would be an insanely high bar to set, they can reliably be expected to endure most anything they could possibly be subjected to during everyday use, and then some, because the company knows and prepared for the eventuality that some of its customers will occasionally get drunk and drop their Game Boy out of a window. I've not done that with my Game Boy. I might have done that with my Amazon Kindle, and it did survive. And speaking of games and Game Boys and all of that good stuff, Star Conflict, today's sponsor, which you can get started with for free. In Star Conflict, you can take part in epic space battles where you can fly over 240 spaceships from 4 different factions. Loads of different ships to choose from so you can find something that matches how you like to play. Maybe you're the sort of person who likes to get a big old destroyer and go destroy things, or maybe you're more of a person who likes a smaller interceptor sort of thing. There's loads of choices. So what can you do in the game? Well, P2P, cooperative raids, and it's all open world, so there's loads of different stuff to choose from, loads of danger, loads of rewards. It's a game that is super easy to get into as well. You just load it up and you start playing. But it's also tricky to master, so there's lots of space for developing skills. It's a lot of fun, it's a free game like I said, and it's a great way to support the show. So get a Black Hawk spaceship for free, 3 days of account boost. Just click the link below to get started, and let's get into that bonus fact. Given Nintendo obviously wasn't making electronic games back in 1889 when the company was first founded, you might now be wondering, well, what did they do? Well, originally named Nintendo Koppai, the small business founded in Kyoto by Fusajiro Yamauchi originally produced Hanafuda Cards. For those unfamiliar, indeed. These are simply playing cards that are used to play multiple games, much like the more common standardized 52 playing card set. If you're wondering about the name of the company, it's generally thought that it comes from the Japanese name Nintendou, roughly translated. Nin means entrusted and ten-dou means heaven, so basically leave luck to heaven. So fast forward to 1953 and the company was being run by the dude's grandson, Hiroshi Yamauchi, and he became the first person to produce plastic playing cards in Japan. This initiative proved to be immensely popular and resulted in Nintendo dominating the industry. However, after a trip to the US in 1956, Hiroshi began rethinking the long-term viability of the playing card business. He came to the conclusion that the business was far too limited. Innovation came in the form of Disney in 1959. Nintendo struck a deal where they were able to print Disney characters on their cards. This enabled the business to tap into an entirely new market. Up until this point, playing cards were regarded almost exclusively as a device for gambling. With the new, much younger target audience, Nintendo created books that explained new games that could be played with these cards that hopefully didn't involve gambling for children. The tie-in was hugely successful and over 600,000 packs were sold in the first year alone. In addition, the success of the new venture resulted in the company deciding to go public in 1962. Their newly injected capital resulted in what we can only refer to as some interesting new business directions for Nintendo. The sample of these ventures include a taxi company, a short-stay hotel chain, yes, that means exactly what you think it does, an instant rice food company, Churatori vacuum cleaners, and toy making, among others. And I've actually done a video on my other channel, Business Plays, all about Nintendo's crazy early businesses. I'll drop a link to it below. Pretty much all of these ventures went nowhere save the toy making. Unfortunately for Nintendo, it was around this time that the playing card business reached a saturation point. Japanese households stopped buying them and Nintendo's stock subsequently fell from 900 to 60 yen. All wasn't lost, however. In 1965, the company hired a new maintenance engineer for their assembly line. His name was Gunpei Yokoi, and he would soon help turn Nintendo's luck around. Nintendo was struggling to keep afloat in the toy industry at this time, and their crippling debt probably wasn't helping matters. That was all about to change, though. In 1970, while touring one of his Hanafuda factories, Hiroshi noticed the aforementioned Gunpei Yokoi playing with an extending arm that he had made. Deciding to take a gamble, Hiroshi requested Gunpei develop this arm as a proper product that was subsequently released just in time for Christmas. Selling over 1 million units, the Ultra Hand was an instant hit and earned Gunpei a position in product development. He was highly successful and thanks to his engineering background was able to develop many lucrative electronic toys, including a love tester for Nintendo. This was significant because they were one of the only companies developing such toys at the time. As such, they were able to charge a higher price and earn a greater profit margin. It was around this time that the company began taking an interest in the popularity of video games and were keen to get their fingers in that pie. They did this by securing the rights to distribute the Magnavox Odyssey in Japan, which was the world's first commercial home video game console. After their success at their new venture, they decided to develop their own games for the home and arcade. Their first was released in 1975 and was called EVR Race. It was closely followed by others, including a little game by the name of Donkey Kong, which you've probably heard of. The hugely successful ape-centric game was the brainchild of Shigeru Miyamoto, a rising rock star in the gaming industry. It was released in arcades as well as on the Atari 2600, in television, and ColecoVision. In addition to this, the company began experimenting with handheld video games such as the Game & Watch, a predecessor to the Game Boy. Tired of creating ports for other systems, Nintendo decided to branch out into the realm of console development in 1983. The result was the Famicom, short for Family Computer, which was released exclusively in Japan. Initially, it was successful and sold about 500,000 systems in a mere 2 months. Unfortunately, the company received complaints about the system freezing, and upon investigation, a fault was found in the chips. All remaining Famicoms on the shelves were subsequently recalled. Nintendo attempted to recover by reaching out to Atari for a partnership, but the video game crash of 1983, caused by a saturation of the market as well as some truly terrible games and competition from home computers, this destroyed this option. No stranger to difficult times, simply by surviving, Nintendo was able to turn this crash into a net benefit as most of their competition went the way of the dodo. Then, in 1985, the company announced a worldwide release of the Famicom, but with a few changes, including, fixing the problem with the original hardware. The design of the console was also altered and the name was changed to something you might know, the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES. To help prevent another market crash, Nintendo limited the number of games that third-party developers could release each year. Another milestone of this year was the release of Super Mario Bros., a game that needs no introduction. Incidentally, fun fact, the first person to do the voice of Mario also did the voice of Optimus Prime and Eeyore. How about that? Over the following decades, Nintendo released an abundance of home and handheld consoles that need no introduction, and in 2019 alone, the company brought in a whopping $11 billion in sales, with about $2 billion of that being profit. Not bad for a simple playing card company that was started all the way back in 1889. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. Smash that like button. Go over and check out today's sponsor, Star Conflict. They're linked to below. Thank you for watching.